Thank you, Mr. President. This is a prime example of the legislature talking out of both sides of its mouth. We know we have an affordable housing crisis in the state of California, and this bill is not going to do anything to make housing more affordable. It expands the coverage of the prevailing wage on private developments receiving minimal public subsidies by lowering the amount of public subsidy that will trigger the law's application as a public works project. Specifically, the amount of the public subsidy triggering the coverage required would be generally lower than both less than $500,000 and less than 2% of the project's cost. The bill also specifies that a public subsidy for a project consisting entirely of single-family dwelling units is de minimis if less than 2% of the total project cost. AB520 codifies that if a project receives a public subsidy in the area of $500,000 and is less than 2% of the total project's cost, employers will be required to pay prevailing wage, which of course is going to get passed on to the consumer in higher housing costs. This is an ill-conceived power grab by labor unions at the expense of all Californians. California has a homeless problem and a housing crisis. Adding more costs onto the already high costs and fees mandated on development and construction will only make our crisis worse. For every $1,000 you increase the price of a home, 15,000 Californians can no longer afford to buy that home. Extrapolating it to $10,000, and that figure goes up to 150,000 Californians that will now not be able to further afford a home in the Golden State. Passage of AB 520 will mean a dead end to the American dream for tens of thousands of Californians. Instead of finding a home, how many will end up on the streets, exacerbating one of the largest humanitarian crises that not only our state has witnessed, but our country is enduring. AB 520 not only will impact the cost to build homes, but the construction of apartments, playgrounds, parks, schools, state office buildings, community clinics, public infrastructure, and so much more. AB 520 will deliver a severe blow to the small and medium-sized contractors struggling to grow their businesses and the number of people that they can employ. Many of these smaller businesses are minority-owned. If you care about California's homeless, if you want to grow jobs and help solve our housing crisis, then vote to make it easier and less expensive to build more housing. Don't make it harder and more expensive. Your vote today is going to determine whether you support the unions in this state or whether you support the constituents that are struggling to afford the American dream of home ownership. Your vote will be rather transparent and very clear. For those reasons, I urge a no vote on AB 520.